And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, welcome to this Saturday's aviation segment and the flying weather graphic for Sunday morning here, showing a front with a band of IFR out over the Bering Sea extending down to the eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR eastward here and along the Alaska Peninsula, and right on up to Cape Newenham, almost into Togiak Bay there. VFR back to the west, VFR to the east and north, all the way to the Arctic coast. Some IFR along the eastern border there, and becoming marginal VFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Mostly marginal VFR for the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, area of IFR here up over the northern Bering Sea, and marginal VFR from that area down to the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, and also marginal VFR here along the North Gulf Coast down to Kodiak Island. And pretty good there for the southeast coast, VFR, Yakutat VFR, and just about everywhere else, all the way up to the Arctic coast, looking at VFR conditions. A little bit of marginal VFR there over the eastern interior, but nothing too serious, and then some more marginal VFR for the western Aleutians. And for Monday morning, narrow band of IFR here right along the southwest coast and between St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Island, but VFR there from Gamble and Savunga, right on up across the Chukchi Sea into the Arctic, and then southward here, all the way down to the Alaska Range, and then picking up some marginal VFR here, Cook Inlet, southern and eastern Kenai Peninsula, the Prince William Sound, maybe slipping up into the central Copper River Basin, but stays marginal for the Alaska Peninsula. Pretty good zone of VFR out here over the Aleutians, and VFR, mostly VFR for the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, some marginal VFR now down over the southern Panhandle, otherwise VFR elsewhere. Interior Alaska, good VFR. And now some marginal VFR up to St. Lawrence Island, and a band of IFR here from the northern Bering Sea, right across Nunivak Island and the southwest coast here into southern Cook Inlet, mostly Kamishak Bay and Kodiak Island. VFR from the western Alaska Peninsula all the way back to the west to around Kiska Island. And for the passes for Sunday, Anatuvik and Adigan looking good. Brooks Range should be open. All the passes in the Brooks Range should be VFR tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, rainy, same forecast, good VFR for windy as well. Isabel, VFR, and mostly VFR from Antasta. Could be some marginal VFR for the northern approach. And for Tanita, VFR, Portage, VFR, and even Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here at the surface tomorrow morning off the southwest coast there, still over the northern Bering Sea, and then back along the North Gulf Coast and over the Panhandle, 2,000 feet down over southern Dixon Entrance, and well south of the Alaska Peninsula. So moving on to icing with the frontal boundary out here, we've got areas of possible isolated moderate icing here for the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutians up to the Pribilofs, and then probably to a lesser extent over the western Aleutians. Still a risk out there, and remainder of the state icing free. Looking at the jet stream here, we've got southeast winds across the Bering Sea from the Alaska Peninsula here, anywhere from 85 to 105 knots there, coming up and around this area of high pressure over the Yukon River. So central western Arctic coast, northwest winds, 90 knots there. 9,000 feet, pretty good low coming up here across the Aleutians into the Bering Sea before it takes a track back to the northwest. Good winds around that, 50 to 65 knots, southeast 45 to 50 knots, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island. And then northwest winds, maybe up to 30 knots, 30, 35 knots for the Arctic coast areas of the North Slope. Pretty light here over the eastern interior into the Gulf of Alaska, as well as the southeast coast. And at 3,000 feet, again, all the wind here over the central and eastern Bering Sea, up to 70 knots there, right over the Pribilof Islands, and west-southwest at about 50 knots for the eastern Aleutians, and stronger winds in advance of the front there for the Alaska Peninsula. And easterlies, 50 to maybe 60 knots there as they get over toward eastern Norton Sound. And from there, looking at turbulence, mechanical light to isolated moderate turbulence, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and the North Gulf Coast to about the Copper River Delta, and probably northeast Prince William Sound as well. Otherwise, the more heavier significant turbulence is going to be here over the southwest interior, southwest Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, as well as up here for Norton Sound and the mid and lower Yukon River Valley, Seward Peninsula, possibly up to Kotzebue, as well as St. Lawrence Island.